Right. Well, so these are the most important things I think we should know before we actually proceed with reading the poem or reciting it. Well, some background information about its title character, Thamuris, who is better known as Tamyris, but Browning uses a more advanced transliteration of Greek words, which is, by the way, currently accepted by modern Greek scholars. They would prefer spelling it with a U rather than a Y, yes. Although it doesn't actually reflect, neither variant reflects the actual pronunciation, but never mind. Yes, we'll speak about who the chap is and why really Browning needed him. And then we'll say a few words about his occupation. Why is he marching? He's supposed to be a poet, not really a military man. So we'll see. And then we'll try to orient him within the context of the main poem where this rhymed fragment comes about, which is Aristophanes' Apology, and comes about quite unexpectedly. But we'll see what the use of that fragment may be. And then I'd like to draw your attention to another poem which I believe almost mirrors the one we're going to deal with. There are so many parallels, but this is a mirror. It's not exactly a mirror image. It's more like negative and positive, like what used to be on film and the actual photo print. What is dark in one poem turns out to be quite bright in the other, and that's amazing. And we'll see why. We'll try to see why. But first, as a way to break the ice, what makes me qualified to speak about this character, Thamuris or Thamuris? Well, not really much. I come from a country which is sometimes clustered belonging to the Balkan region, but it's not quite true. Yeah, there's it's in the top right corner, Moldova, but Tamyris comes from Thrace, and Thrace is separated from Moldova by the Balkan Mountains. Actually, the main belt comes about there. And in order to get from one place to another, you need to cross those mountains, which I did once, many years ago, back in 1998, while traveling to Istanbul on a coach. My first trip abroad, actually, from my native land, and I crossed the whole of Thrace, actually, or Thrace, if you prefer. Although I didn't know back in those days what I was doing, but I think that at least partially qualifies me for the job. Been there, although perhaps not done that, not quite. And sometimes, especially by Romanian historians, Moldova is also accepted as part of the greater Thrace, what they call it. But this is a controversial theory. And so, Tamyris, quite a common story back in antiquity. He was one of those who dared challenge the divine monopoly. No, he is not the only one. There is what Browning would later call a band of people who disputed the prerogative of a certain guild. In this case, it's a guild headed by a fair-haired gentleman and a sorority of 9 black-haired ladies, otherwise known as Apollo and the Muses, who believe they have appropriated the unique right to lyric poetry. And lyric poetry back in those days was poetry sung to the, obviously, accompanied by the lyre, the music of the lyre. And yes, so it was that guild who enjoyed the monopoly, and it was true not only in the field of arts, but also in the field of crafts, because back in those days there was no real difference drawn between art and craft. To show an example, Thamuris was a lyric poet. He played the lyre, he sang to the lyre, and he challenged the muses, trying to show to them that he was not inferior to them in those skills. And so did Marsyas. He also challenged Apollo, although he played a different instrument. He played the flute. But he also contested the divine monopoly, Apollo's monopoly to that art. But now take Arachne, a craft lady who, a weaver, who challenged Athena herself, and in the craft of weaving, obviously. She tried to show, to demonstrate she was not an inferior weaver in her skill of, well, weaving whatever you like, to the goddess. So this theme appears again and again. So there is some artist or craftsman who believes that the gods shouldn't get all the royalties or shouldn't get all the fees, that mortals, common mortals, can do that just as well. And well, unfortunately, nothing comes out of it. All these contests look more like show trials, as I say. Well, the humans invariably lose. And well, no wonder, of course. Imagine somebody holding a patent and reviewing a case of some contestant who says, well, he invented that as well independently of you, or perhaps invented it at the same time as you. What would you do? You would say, no, of course, it's nonsense, rubbish. He stole that secret from me, perhaps, or this is plagiarism. He simply reproduced my work without actually knowing how to design it from scratch. Or at the very worst, you would say, no, this is reverse engineering. He can't discover the secret independently. He can't, because it was imparted to me by gods. No human can come up with it. And this is what happens. So well, they are punished, of course, very severely. And Thamuris' punishment is the mildest, by the way. He is simply deprived of his inspiration. So some sources say he is blinded by the muses, but at least he stays alive and he stays human. While Marsyas, for example, you know what his punishment is? He's slayed him, yes. And Arachne is turned into a spider, of course. So Thamuris is the luckiest in that company. Right, and well, this is how matters stand in antiquity, and they carry on like that, well, up until the 19th century, in late 19th century. Well, until then, these attempts are repeated. and people get people challenge the gods. It's mostly artists, no longer craftsmen, but artists, and they get punished for that. I think, well, the case of Hölderlin, who went mad eventually, it happened in the early 19th century. And it's interesting to remember how he himself accounted for his madness. He said he was struck by Apollo. Yes, so struck by Apollo because he was involved with inventing or pronouncing names of gods. So, well, obviously, it was an encroachment once again on divine monopoly, and he was punished for that. And I say Hölderlin was probably the last victim, unless we count Nietzsche, because Nietzsche didn't explain why he went mad, but as soon as he did it, he signed his letters. He wrote a few mad letters, which he signed with the name of Dionysus. So probably it was the same story again, the same encroachment on the divine area for which he was punished. But it's a disputed case. But what changes in the Victorian time? Something changes. It's divine monopoly becomes challenged more and more repeatedly, more and more actively, and not only in the field of arts, but also in the field of arts. And in fact, all this advancement of science, of discoveries, inventions, grows and grows in size like a snowball, like an avalanche, and it becomes increasingly difficult for gods to defend their monopoly. So, well, there's one scientific discovery followed by another. And if this attempt fails, the one who goes after that loser or that apparent loser stands a better chance to complete that feat, to finally reach that discovery. And that happens, as I say, everywhere, not just in the field of art, but science, technology, geography. There's the band of those divine challenges is increasing, is growing in number, and until finally the divine monopoly is expected to give way. And I think it's this that Browning actually presents in the poem we are about to read. But before we read it, let's be slightly more specific about the way that its character, Thamuris, performs that challenge. So why does he need a march? Why does Browning need him to march? Why not start with describing the contest itself? Why such a long walk? And of course, we described in our previous session, we discussed in our previous session that Browning was an avid walker. But this is not quite a pleasure walk, not quite a stroll. It's a march. So what's the difference between a walk and a march? Well, march obviously is a more formalized walk. So we can define it as a ritual walk. A ritual walk, which originally was part of something larger, something composite, something complex. And if we look at the first Pythian ode by Pindar, we will see that this holistic approach to poetry is actually stated there in the first two lines of that ode. And this is the same ode, by the way, which is referenced by Elizabeth Barrett Browning in her sonnet 19, the same one. And from the poet's forehead to my heart receive this lock, which outweighs Argos's, so as purply black as earth to Pindar's eyes. The dim purpureal tresses gleamed athwart the 9 white muse brows. But this is well, an extremely interesting reference. To say just one thing, it makes the poet to whom it is addressed an androgyne, because he is compared to, his lock of hair is compared to those of muses, female muses. But this is digression. Right. Yeah, I'll try to get Pindar's text. It's translation, I don't know whose, but what I'd like to draw your attention to is that, well, we have in the first sentence, we have this composite definition of lyric poetry. And you remember, we don't speak lyric, it's called lyric poetry, but it doesn't mean it's personal poetry, it doesn't mean something intimate. It's so-called choral lyric. So it's performed publicly, it's performed collectively, it's sung in honor of some Olympic, well, not Olympic, sports champions. So this is something extremely, the opposite of what we understand by lyrics today. Anyway, golden lyre, rightful joint possession of Apollo, and the violet-haired muses to which the dance step listens. The beginning of splendid festivity, and singers obey your notes. Whenever with your quivering strings you prepare to strike a chorus, up chorus leading preludes. So we have the lyre, which provides the music, and we have the dance step. But this is not quite what the original says. I remember talking to my classics teacher many years ago, and we discussed this very Pythian ode, and he said well, the original word says simply walk. So it's not a dance, it's a walk. Or at least that's a primitive sort of dance, which is not that different from a ritual walk. So a choral lyric, original choral lyric, was closely connected with walking. Walking to the music, to be sure. And this is why we still call parts of the verse feet. So, well, it may sound strange, but what originally a poetic meter was, it was simply a notation for the right way to put our feet. Well, of course, Pindar's meters are extremely complicated, and I am not even trying to reproduce the step which Pindar would advise me to perform. But in the case of Browning's poem, of course, this is very, very common for English poetry, the iambic pentameter. But iambic pentameter has 5 feet. That technically means I would be originally expected to walk 5 steps up and 5 steps down. And iambic, because it goes from short to long. So a short syllable followed by a long syllable in the foot, and which basically means that I should step on my heel and immediately go to my tiptoe and spend on my tiptoe twice as long time as I should spend on my heel. Right, and this is marching. This is why Thamuris is marching. Actually, not simply strolling or sauntering. So a march is an essential, is an organic, is an intrinsic component integral part of Thamuris's act, playing the lyre, singing a song, and doing it either himself or directing his dancers, his whoever it is, his ballet team, in the right kind of step. So, if we now we're back, and there's a lot of both walking and marching in Browning's poetry, of course. And I think the first poem where this sort of movement is introduced is Cavalier Tunes, whose first it's a set of, I think, three short poems written on behalf of, in the person of a cavalier, well, civil war fighter on the cavalier side, on the king's side. And the first poem is called Marching Along. And it's not a big poem, it's not a great poem, it just has it's basically a list of names who is in favor of the king's cause, who is against it, and it describes this marching. But what is interesting, that the speaker of that poem, but he doesn't know it himself, he doesn't realize it himself, but what he's doing, he's performing a formalized walk, a ritualized walk, fighting for the king's cause, which would turn out to be a lost cause, a lost case, and it sets a very important theme for Browning, for most of his future, a lot of his future poetry, which is apparent failure. So you basically march, you walk, you're not sure if you will win or not, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that you do your job rightly. You prove that you're fit for the job, as Childe Roland will later try to do. And if you do everything properly, if you do your best, it doesn't really matter. If you fail, somebody who goes after you will succeed eventually. And this is what happens in lots of Browning's pieces. And now we switch to Aristophanes and the place of this short piece within the context of Browning's large poem, Aristophanes' Apology. Right, this poem, if poem it is, it's perhaps better to call it a drama, even perhaps. Right, so it's an argument between the famous playwright, the famous writer of comedies, Aristophanes, and a young woman. This is Lysistrata, by the way. not Belostion. I couldn't find a picture of Belostion. A young woman who was, a patriotically minded, erudite young woman who can recite Euripides, a whole play of Euripides from memory. But this time it's actually a sequel to another poem, major drama piece, Belostion's Adventure. But this time Aristophanes argues, tries to justify himself to Belostion, who finds his plays to be quite obscene, quite indecent, and he says, he advances a few arguments. He says, he follows the tradition, and on the one hand, on the other hand, he tries to show life as it really is, and he he loses the arguments eventually. Well, she manages to convince him he's doing the wrong thing. So he's, at least by Victorian standards, and I'm sure that was Browning's own opinion. Aristophanes is not quite up to date. He must he does offend modern sensitivities. Right. After which, having heard this argument against him and seeing that he's about to lose it, Aristophanes suddenly grabs a lyre, the musical instrument, and says, "Okay, I can't really defend my case as a playwright. I am going to do something unusual. I'm going to sing you a lyric song. Well, just for once. Do you think I can't do it? Well, I can do it. Well, nothing. I'm absolutely perfectly empowered, entitled to do that. Why can't I act as a lyric poet for once?" And which takes us to the so-called one word more situation. This is what Browning does in the poem which bears the title and which concludes his collection called Men and Women. He says there that you can't be sincere. A professional poet or a professional artist, or whatever his art, can't express sincerely his own feelings because, when you do it professionally, you simply lose it. You lose your sincerity. You produce something nice, something perfect even, but it won't come from the depths of your soul. And this is what I call the Andrea del Sarto syndrome. Andrea del Sarto, in his monologue, also part of Men and Women, also complains about that. He says, well, there are many artists, many painters who are rubbish, basically, compared to me, but in whose breast burns the true soul of inspiration. At least they try to express what they really feel. Well, I can't do that. I can draw a perfect image, but it's lifeless, it's soulless, and that's my curse. So Browning seems to subscribe to this idea, and he says that if you act as a professional, you lose the right to sincerity. And in one word more, what he does, his claim to sincerity is that he, for once, he speaks in his own voice rather than speaking through a character. And this is a paradoxical, but he says he's by adopting an uncommon genre for himself, he will hopefully succeed in being sincere. And he gives other examples: Raphael writing poetry, Dante drawing an angel, and it's only then when they tried something, and then when they acted basically as amateurs, then they stood a chance of expressing their true feelings. And this is what Aristophanes does. Only Aristophanes acts as a lyric poet in his apology, which he probably never did in his real life. But he tries, has a go in art or craft in which he is not expert. And by doing that, he hopes to sound more convincing, more sincere, more honest, better in all respects. And this is why this story of Tamyris is actually introduced. It's Aristophanes acting an amateur. Right. This is the well, the background, this was the background of the historical, if you wish, background of the story. Another parallel, another observation. I said that the poem itself, the march itself, bears a close resemblance to another famous march or another famous walk, the walk to the Dark Tower. But this time, this walk, it doesn't happen at the sunset, it rather happens at sunrise. And although we can't claim that Browning preferred, or definitely preferred the sunrise to the sunset, the imagery, well, yes, we have Love Among the Ruins, which is a very optimistic, very bright poem, which is set at sunset. But basically, the parallelism between the child Roland to the Dark Tower came, and Thamuris marching is so striking that it sometimes seems to me that Browning especially wrote that piece to show the difference, how the same walk can look while the sun is setting or while the sun is rising. But we'll see that when we actually read the poem. And why is actually this piece, Thamuris marching, is set at sunrise rather than sunset? And I think this is because Tamyris is better qualified. We remember from Child Roland that his two predecessors failed because they didn't actually meet the high moral standards advanced to the candidates for those who wanted to reach the Dark Tower. One night's disgrace, hangman's hands. It's not necessarily celibacy they swore to those knights who their steps addressed to the Dark Tower. It may be that in order to be a challenger to the divine monopoly, you just need to be honest, and you can't resort to stealing the know-how. You must be perfectly honest, and you must be sure that you're doing it on your own. You're not reverse engineering, or you're not plagiarizing. And this there's no good example. I'm saying that neither Prometheus nor Odin, both are actually thieves. Prometheus stole divine fire, while Odin in Scandinavian mythology stole the mead of poetry from another guild, which had also, by the way, 9 members. No, you must be honest. You must do it at sunrise rather than sunset, and you'll be saved. You'll be justified, and that's how the character actually feels, as we'll see soon. And although this apotheosis, the sense of apotheosis, is obviously marred by the suspicion that what he is feeling, what he is expressing, what he is experiencing is just a figment of his imagination, same as in the case with Child Roland, only with the opposite sign. And right, now let me bring the poem to the screen. You don't have to use your books. You can follow it on screen. Some of my markings. Tamyris marching, a lyre and song of Thrace. Pepin the first, the worst of woes, The worst of woes. Yeah, that can happen to you. well, yeah. You're listening. The worst of woes that were allotted lyre and song, ye poet race. Thamuris from Oicalia, feasted there by kingly Eurytus of late, now found for Dorian, now bound for Dorian at the upraised broad and bare. All Mount Pangaeus, all with earth enwound, glittered beneath his footsteps, marching gay and glad. Thessalia through came robed and crowned from triumph onto triumph, mid array of early morn. Came, saw, and knew the spot, assigned to him for his worst of woes that day. Now, this is the first sentence. And things to mind, to mark, is, first of all, Eurytus. Eurytus is, as we know, a king who entertains Thamuris on the way to the audience, to the contest. And Eurytus, it's not just a random name, and nothing is random in Browning. Eurytus is famous as just another member of the band. He also challenged Apollo, although not in singing or playing, but in archery. And we remember that arts and crafts are treated in exactly the same way in antiquity. Yes, art is basically considered a variety of craft, and the other way around. Yes, so he kind of received the blessing of another rebel on the way to his fatal competition. Dorian is simply a locale, but which already in antiquity wasn't sure about whether it's a mountain or a plain. This is not so important. Mount Pangaea, Browning treats it as a mountain, or with earth inwound, and this is the beginning of this merger, of this fusion of various substances, of high and low, human and divine, sacred and profane. And this is what ore and earth stand for. They're mixed together, they're mingled, these two different substances, opposite substances. And this is, for Browning, is what most of art, most of poetry is about, and what humanity is about. And we'll see this fusion, this mingling will come up again and again later in the poem. And now, Tamyris is robed and crowned, and this is, for me, it's an obvious reference to another early poem by Browning, Pauline, where we have it in the following version. Well, nature would point at one whose quivering lip was bathed in her enchantments, whose brow burned beneath the crown to which her secrets knelt, who learned the spell which can call up the dead, and then departed smiling like a fiend who has deceived God. If such one should seek again her altars and stand robed and crowned amid the faithful at confession first, remorse and pardon, and all claims renewed, ere I can be as I shall be no more. Now, what's the function of robe and crown? What's here? What's the use of robe and crown here? Here we have an act of deceit, at least. It's admitted openly. Unlike what we have in Thamuris. Thamuris is honest. he does it on his own. He challenges the muses, but it's his own work. It's not plagiarized. Here we have an act of deceit. So God, well, obviously this is presented all in more Christian terms here. Now, and he committed that act of deceit. So, well, the young man who is the speaker of this juvenile poem by Browning, and being robed and crowned is a mark of return, a sign of return to the camp of the faithful again. So means he's a reformed cheat, and the same, which basically is used to compare to confirm that in our case, in Thamuris's case, we also have a perfectly honest man who challenges the muses.
Dmitry, do you think it's robed and crowned? It's something to do, as it were, with kingship. It's the poet who is being actually crowned, because it goes on from triumph onto triumph. Isn't he wearing, as it were, it's almost like the I Stedford or something like this? I've always thought. Do you think that's right?
Oh, well, yes, it's more or less a uniform he's wearing, yes. But, well, I also found this reference to Pauline quite remarkable, yes. So it's more, something more than simply being dressed for the occasion. Yes, yes. It's his sign of having passed the fitness test, if you like.
Yeah.
And sorry, why is it gone? So on we go. Ballura, happier while its name was not, met him, but nowise menaced, slipped aside obsequious river to pursue its lot. Of solace in the valley, say some wide, thick, busy human cluster, house and home, embanked for peace of thrift and thanks the tide. Thamuris marching laughed, each flake of foam, as sparklingly the ripple raced him by, mocked slower clouds adrift in the blue dome. Now, Child Roland also crosses the river, but a very different one. This is a river which is sinister, which is evil, which does all possible bad things to those who cluster around it. But here it's a river. First of all, he doesn't cross it. He meets it, but the river turns aside. He walks in parallel to it. Doesn't have to actually cross it. And it's also a bubbling river, a foaming river. But instead of menacing, instead of threatening the character, it actually looks benevolent to him. So an obvious parallel, but in a very different light. And look at the exclamation of Tamyris. Here we come again. It comes again. The clouds, the flakes of foam which the river produce mock clouds in the sky. So once again, it continues. Heaven and earth and sky merge. What looks like a cloud is actually a flake of foam, and the opposite. So, and this is persistently repeated, this marriage of heaven and earth, if you wish, in Blakean terms. It also it's insisted upon in this poem. For autumn was the season. We already told about it. Yes, autumn was the season. No, I told about sunrise. Okay. Yeah, autumn deserves special mention. Red the sky held morn's conclusive signet of the sun, to break the mists up, bid them blaze and die. Yes, autumn is possibly Browning's favorite season, and many revelations, many winning situations occur in the autumn, in the autumnal setting. If we remember By the Fireside, Two in the Campania, they also have the autumnal setting. So the perfect time, perhaps, for this sort of apotheosis revelation. Morn had the mastery as one by one all poems produce themselves along the tract, from earth far ending to near heaven begun. Once again, heaven approaches the earth, it gets nearer and nearer. Was there a ravaged tree, it laughed compact with gold, a leaf bold, crisp, high brandished now, tempting to onset frost which late attacked. And this is another reference to Childe Roland. In fact, we don't really know when Thamuris was written. Perhaps it's a much earlier piece than Aristophanes' Apology. So it's Browning enters into a dialogue actually with his juvenile piece. He does the same thing on a couple of more occasions. James Lee's wife is one example. Right, and so a ravaged tree which parallels the palsied oak in Childe Roland, but once again it looks scary and sinister and appalling. But here we have a ravaged tree, also a distorted and damaged tree, but it laughs instead of threatening the travelers. Was there a wizened shrub, a starveling bough, a fleecy thistle filched from by the wind, a weed Pan's trampling hoof would disallow? Well, it's getting closer and closer to Childe Roland. Well, yes. Well, we have poor, starved, ignoble nature in Childe Roland, and it's also represented here, but has nothing of that threatening and sinister appearance as it does. Is it because of the sunset rather than sunrise rather than sunset, or is it because of Tamyris is better qualified for the job? Who knows? But what I find the most striking thing is Pan's trampling hoof, and we also have a hoof in Childe Roland, only it's devil's hoof, and this is Pan's hoof. So Pan is also a deity with claims to universality. Its folk etymology interprets Pan as simply meaning everything in Greek. So quite an important deity, which also tramples on the path which the character follows. But once again, it's a blessing rather than a curse, which Pan's trampling on the place brings into the poem. Each with a glory and a rapture twined about it joined, the rush of air and light and force, the world was of one joyous mind. Yes, perfect bliss. Say not the birds flew, they forbore their rights, swam, reveling onward in the roll of things. Say not the beast's mirth bounded, that was flight. How could the creatures creep, no lift of wings? Such earth's community of purpose, such the ease of earth's fulfilled imaginings. So did the near and far appear to touch in the moment's transport, that an interchange of function far with near seems scarce too much. Well, yeah, I leave it without a comment because it just repeats the previously initiated theme. yes, far and near, holy and profane, earth and sky, water and sky, flying and crawling, all unite in this holistic, post-theotic ecstasy, in the way completely opposite to Childe Roland. And had the rooted plant aspired to range with a snake's license, while the insect yearned to glow fixed as the flower, it were not strange. No more than if the flattery treetop turned to actual music, sang itself a lot, or if the wind impassioned chantress earned the right to soar, embodied in some soft, fine form, all fit to for cloud companionship and blissful once touch beauty chased so oft. Thamuris marching left no fancy sleep, born of the fiery transport, lyre and song were his, to smite with hand and launch from lip. Peerless recorded since the list grew long of poets, says Thamuris, free to stand pedestaled mid the muses' temple throng. And here comes the band, the band of all of those challenges of divine monopoly, of which Tamyris is the best so far. A statued service, laureled lyre in hand, aye, for we see them, Tamyris of Thrace, predominating foremost of the band. Therefore the moon ray that enriched his face, if it gave lambent chill, took flame again from flush of pride. He saw, he knew the place, same as Childe Roland, who finally recognizes the place, although he does it with extreme difficulty. No wonder, yeah, he's not so well qualified for the job, and he's doing it at sunset rather than sunrise. What wind arrived with all the reasons from plain, hill, dale, and that rough wildwood interspersed. Compounding this of one consummate strain, it reached him music, but his own outburst of victory concluded the account, and that grew song which was mere music erst. Be my Parnassus, thou Pangaean mount, and turn the river nameless hitherto. Famed shall thou vie with famed Peres fount. Here I await the end of this ado which wins earth's poet or the heavenly muse. Right. Yes, by the way, this Balura or Balira, it's commonly spelled with a Y, which comes on the way of Tamyris, is, according to Pausanias, the river is named after him, from Tamyris throwing his lyre after his blinding, from the Greek balin, which means to throw. Yes, and that's why he says, Browning says happier while its name was not, but it's hardly true etymology. Anyway, I'll try to make it to shorten as much as possible because I've been talking for nearly an hour. And the last thing I would like to mention how to do it full screen again. Is it? No. Sorry. Escape? No, it's. Sorry, I wanted to go full screen again. This. Mm-hmm. Right. Yes, I think, well, these are just my random thoughts. There are many conclusions we can draw. from this poem. So Browning apparently argues with his own youthful personality, same thing as he does in James Lee's Wife, when he quotes his own earlier poem and then criticizes, actually almost dismantles it, saying this silly young man is wrong. Well, Thamuris, and we remember this is a much earlier poem than the main body of Aristophanes' Apology. Well, is brought as a sample of a purely lyrical piece, which Browning says you can express yourself lyrically, but not really anymore. It was possible in the time of Shelley. Shelley was a saint, if you wish, a divine person, which could afford doing that professionally, but nowadays you can't really do it anymore, and you can do it still as an amateur, still as an act of self-polemic, so to say, of engaging in a dialogue with your own younger self, but not in earnest. What you can do, what the job, the task of our age is to combine base things with high things, and this what Aristophanes says is he is actually doing and will carry on doing. To conclude on a more learned note, this is in perfect accordance with a famous Russian literary scholar, Mikhail Bakhtin, who says that in the 19th century, in the late 19th century, literature as a whole is so much influenced by the predominating genre of that age, the realistic novel, that it begins to assimilate, to get assimilated to it. And the main feature of the novel, according to Bakhtin, is the polyphony, that a novel is never spoken, is never said, is never written in a single voice. There is always a number of voices that engage in some sort of argument with each other. And this is what Browning does in many of his works. Some of his works, which are, of course, monologues, but what sometimes which grow into dialogues, especially in his later poetry. That's done in Fifine and the Fair, for example, where he actually argues with his own Byronic side. And in Thamuris, in Aristophanes' Apology, I think he more or less engages with his Shelleyan past and presents this apology for not being like Shelley, but rather for being more matter of fact, for being more concerned, more engaged with everyday life, although it may seem ugly and imperfect and random, but still, this is my job, says Aristophanes at the end of this piece. He says something along these lines, that Tamyris was a challenger of the divine monopoly, but I am not. I prefer to be human rather than divine, and I'm pretty sure that Browning, in this case, speaks in his own voice.
Well,